Coyote Pass. It's just ridiculous.
I think Robyn felt like she was gonna be persecuted or attacked or something, and I'm like, no, we can be adults here.
Robyn hates girl games.
Well, hello, ladies.
Woohoo, look at those. My girlfriends and I wanted to go travel.
Never mistake crying for character. Robyn Brown proves that tears can be a weapon. There is a certain tragic comedy in watching Robyn Brown attempt to choreograph her own sainthood. Every episode seems to serve as another chapter in her endless pursuit to be perceived as the wounded savior of a family she helped dismantle. In the latest performance, she manages to turn a simple real estate transaction into a morality play, complete with emotional manipulation, performative suffering, and a cast of thoroughly exhausted supporting characters. It begins with the sale of Coyote Pass, the family's half-finished dream turned desert wasteland. Robyn's reaction is less about logistics and more about the opportunity. An opportunity to script herself as the misunderstood heroine in a world that doesn't appreciate her sacrifices. Watching her coach her children through the sadness of losing the property borders on surreal. A 9-year-old expected to emote over a patch of dirt? It's theater at its most deranged. Ari, to her credit, responds with a dry, "Oh, okay." A moment of accidental comic relief in Robyn's melodrama. Aurora, the ever-loyal echo chamber, steps in to provide the required emotional depth. She's been trained for this role. Robyn's mirror, her sympathetic mouthpiece, parroting every cue of distress or moral indignation her mother requires. The emotional manipulation is almost artful. Robyn's method is clear. Manufacture pain, then swoop in as the healer. She wounds and consoles in the same breath, creating dependence while pretending it's devotion. One doesn't have to be a therapist to recognize the cycle of control disguised as care. Viewers have seen it before. The tearful speeches, the trembling voice, the insistence that everyone else is cruel and she alone is pure-hearted. It's a pattern so consistent it borders on pathology. The notion that Mary and Janelle waiting in their cars was somehow an orchestrated attack against her could be read as absurd if it weren't so revealing. To Robyn, every action, no matter how benign, must somehow revolve around her. The women were cold, waiting, late because of Robyn's own tardiness, but in her mind, it becomes a conspiracy. This is the essence of Robyn's worldview. She is both the center of the universe and its perpetual victim. The concept of other people simply existing outside her narrative does not compute. Her communication skills, once touted as her defining virtue, now manifest as chronic misinterpretation. Where others see coincidence, she sees insult. Where others attempt distance, she sees betrayal. And every misunderstanding is relayed to Cody with theatrical gravity, further poisoning the well. It's an efficient system. She invents a slight, reports it as fact, and watches Cody's resentment toward the other wives deepen, all while she sighs about how unfairly she's treated. This is not new behavior, of course. Robyn has been building this myth of martyrdom for years. When she's not lamenting the loss of family unity, she's quietly dismantling it behind the scenes. Her emotional scripts are devastatingly consistent. Tell the children that the other wives don't like them. Cancel holiday gift exchanges under the guise of safety. Inflict pain, then comfort them for it. The resulting emotional dependence is not maternal, it's manipulative. Aurora, ever watchful for the slightest change in tone or expression, reads her mother's moods like a weather report, desperate to avoid the next storm. It's difficult not to pity the children caught in this psychological loop. The public often critiques Aurora for being overly emotional or dramatic, but what we are witnessing is the byproduct of conditioning. A child who grows up believing her mother's distress is her responsibility will learn to perform empathy as a survival skill. Robyn has weaponized her daughter's love into an emotional shield, proof of her goodness whenever the public dares to question it. The irony is that Robyn's supposed virtue always seems to come at someone else's expense. Her insistence that she was protecting Mary and Janelle during the Coyote Pass dealings would be laughable if it weren't so self-serving. If genuine fairness had been the goal, she could have insisted the property be divided into thirds, Cody and Robyn together, Janelle and Mary, acknowledging both the moral and financial debt owed to those women. Instead, she clung to the fourths, ensuring she and Cody maintained the largest slice while still cloaking herself in a veil of righteousness. Fairness, it seems, is always convenient when it costs her nothing. But fairness was never the objective. Control was. The Coyote Pass property represents more than land. It's Robyn's final lever of influence over the original wives. As long as it exists, she can still play the role of mediator, inserting herself into every financial and emotional negotiation. Without it, she loses her last pretext to interfere. Her reluctance to let go has nothing to do with sentimental value and everything to do with power. Even her relationship with Cody has taken on a strange performance quality. Once the obedient partner, she now seems trapped in the very web she spun. The spark of devotion has curdled into visible discomfort. Every interaction between them feels like an awkward pantomime. Two people pretending for the cameras while privately drowning in resentment. Her smiles are tight, her eyes dart. It's the body language of someone performing normalcy under duress. Still, Robyn clings to the act. The family might have dissolved, the public might have seen through the tears, but in her mind, she remains the suffering saint, the only one who tried. Her tears are the punctuation marks of her narrative. "They all left," she cries, conveniently ignoring the years of manipulation that drove them away. To her, self-awareness is unnecessary when victimhood is available. Watching Robyn, one begins to suspect she doesn't actually crave love or peace. She craves the appearance of them. She doesn't want unity unless she controls it, doesn't want forgiveness unless it confirms her innocence. Her version of family is a kingdom, and she the misunderstood queen ruling over a court of traitors. Every act of contrition, every public lament, is another attempt to reestablish her sovereignty in a kingdom that no longer exists. And yet, she cannot stop. The cycle of grievance is her oxygen. Without conflict, there is no sympathy. Without sympathy, there is no control. So she continues, crafting new narratives of betrayal to justify her tears. The result is a woman simultaneously pitiable and exasperating, a tragic figure who mistakes manipulation for love and martyrdom for virtue. If Robyn truly wanted healing, she would start by confronting the wreckage she's caused. But introspection requires humility, and humility has never been her strong suit. It's far easier to cry about being misunderstood than to admit to misunderstanding everyone else. In the world of Robyn Brown, accountability is a language she's never bothered to learn. There comes a point in every long-running reality show when the central figure, drunk on his own myth, begins to believe he's starring in scripture rather than television. For Sister Wives, that moment arrived years ago. But Cody Brown remains its unshakable prophet of self-delusion, a man convinced that every failure is someone else's moral defect and every loss a divine test of his leadership. His ego has weathered collapse after collapse, emerging not humbled, but hungrier for validation. Watching him now is like witnessing a man argue with the ruins of his own empire, still demanding applause for his management skills.
Cody's unraveling would be funny if it weren't so pitiful.
He has spent so long preaching about family values while systematically dismantling his own that the irony now borders on biblical. His latest performance, raging at the mere suggestion that Mary might have been encouraged to leave by her friend Jen, reveals the narcissism beneath his tantrums. In his world, no woman may exit unless dismissed by royal decree. He can publicly humiliate Mary for years, deride her on camera, and declare her spiritually divorced. But if she finally walks out with dignity and a support system, suddenly it's treachery. How dare she leave on her own terms? And worse, how dare another woman empower her to do it? That is the essence of Cody's ego. Women may suffer, but only in ways that center him. His disdain for female autonomy is barely concealed behind his pseudo-religious vocabulary of loyalty and obedience. When Mary, after a decade of public humiliation, finally accepted reality, Cody reacted not with relief, but outrage. He had long wanted her gone, but he wanted the narrative to remain his. She was supposed to fade quietly, not be cheered on by friends and fans who had grown tired of watching her beg for crumbs of affection. His fury over Jen's friendship with Mary is almost comically revealing. A man who once insisted his wives find fulfillment outside him now seethes because one actually did. He cannot stand the idea of any woman finding validation without his permission. When he sneers about outsiders meddling, what he truly means is that someone punctured his monopoly on emotional control. Cody's delusion extends beyond his domestic life and into his public persona. His stint on Special Forces was meant to be his redemption tour, a platform to prove his masculinity and reclaim a shred of dignity. What it delivered instead was brutal, unscripted reality. A cast of strangers who had never heard of him and, within 2 weeks, openly pitied him. They saw what years of viewers already knew, that behind the bluster is a man of staggering fragility, desperate for validation, incapable of teamwork, and utterly allergic to introspection. Participants reportedly described him as low IQ, creepy, and childlike. The footage showed a man puffing up his chest, convinced he was leading the troops, while everyone else simply tolerated him like an overexcited mascot. It was the purest distillation of Cody's self-image versus his reality. A messiah of mediocrity, begging to be taken seriously. Even Robyn, his once devoted disciple, appears to be losing faith. Her body language around him speaks volumes. Stiff smiles, eyes darting, the visible fatigue of someone chained to a man she can no longer defend. She built her identity around being the one wife who understood Cody, who could translate his divine masculine nonsense into family harmony. Now, she looks like a woman regretting a lifetime subscription to chaos. The shared delusion that once bound them, that they were the righteous pair abandoned by ungrateful wives, has curdled into mutual resentment. Cody's descent has become increasingly manic. Every episode features a new outburst, a fresh round of self-pitying monologues delivered with the conviction of a man auditioning for a Greek tragedy. He rails about betrayal while ignoring decades of neglect, moans about fatherhood while conveniently forgetting the children he emotionally abandoned. His tears flow only for himself. His empathy never extends beyond his own reflection. The cruelty of it all lies in his refusal to acknowledge consequence. His children's estrangement, their open disgust toward him, are not the results of his actions, at least not in his mind. He paints himself as the victim of rebellion rather than the architect of alienation. The audacity is breathtaking. The man who discarded his older children now sobs about their rejection as though parenting were a popularity contest he accidentally lost. He is not unique, of course. There are legions of men who abandon families, reinvent themselves as heroes in new households, and then act bewildered when the past refuses to stay buried. What makes Cody so fascinating is his insistence on turning every failure into a sermon. He doesn't merely ignore accountability. He weaponizes denial as self-righteousness. Watching him moralize about loyalty after years of public cruelty is like watching a man lecture about ethics while pocketing the silverware. Even his obsession with optics betrays him. Every decision, from selling Coyote Pass to moving houses, is dressed up in moral justification when the real motive is vanity. He hides behind protecting the family when he's really protecting his ego. The sale of property becomes a stage for redemption. Moving homes becomes a symbolic fresh start. In truth, these are just new backdrops for the same performance. Cody doesn't rebuild. He relocates. Every time life demands growth, he simply packs up the dysfunction and unloads it somewhere new. That same pattern explains his erratic finances. He and Robyn have built their empire on emotional and monetary short-termism. Big houses, bigger loans, and grand declarations of new beginnings. The McMansion that once symbolized their triumph is now a monument to decay, reportedly gutted by new owners because it was falling apart. Robyn calls the move an escape from bad memories. More likely, it was an escape from unpaid maintenance and mounting embarrassment. In the Brown household, spiritual revelation always seems to coincide with financial mismanagement. Even his physical transformation mirrors his mental collapse. The once carefully styled patriarch now oscillates between manic self-care and complete disregard. His infamous mustache episode, shaving it with the intensity of a man on the brink, became unintentionally symbolic. Robyn's sycophantic, "It looks good," was not a compliment, but a symptom of shared delusion. In their little kingdom of denial, even the absurd must be affirmed. The tragedy is that Cody could have been something other than this. Not a good husband, perhaps, but at least a self-aware one. The rare moments when he acknowledges his failures as a father offer fleeting glimpses of clarity before he retreats back into self-mythology. He has flashes of insight, then quickly buries them under bravado. It's as though accountability briefly knocks on the door, and he sprints to the window to escape it. The dynamic between Cody and Robyn now feels like a parody of the power they once held. Two narcissists locked in a house of mirrors, each reflecting the other's delusion. He mistakes control for love. She mistakes manipulation for martyrdom. Together, they orbit the wreckage of their family, performing grief for a camera crew that long ago stopped buying it. Meanwhile, the women he discarded, Christine, Janelle, Mary, have achieved the unthinkable in Cody's moral universe. They have found happiness without him. Christine's new marriage glows with the kind of contentment that doesn't need an audience. Janelle, pragmatic and steady, has built a quiet independence that renders Cody's tantrums even more embarrassing. Mary, after years of humiliation, has finally detached from his gravitational pull. Their peace is his punishment. Their joy, his daily indictment. Still, Cody rages on, determined to rewrite the narrative. He wants to be seen as misunderstood, not monstrous. Every Talking Head segment becomes an attempt to reframe his downfall as noble suffering. But there's nothing noble about a man who demands sympathy for the wounds he inflicted. His tears are not redemption. They are performance art for an audience that has finally learned to laugh. Cody Brown is not the misunderstood patriarch he imagines. He is a cautionary tale about the dangers of self-worship, the inevitable collapse of a man who confuses dominance with devotion. His empire of plural love has dwindled into a two-person echo chamber, and even that is starting to crack. What remains is the empty theater of his ego, a prophet still preaching long after the congregation has left. There comes a time in every long-running reality saga when even the most devoted audience realizes the show is no longer documenting life, it's embalming it. Sister Wives has long passed that threshold. What began as a messy but sincere exploration of plural marriage has devolved into a mausoleum of denial, a weekly seance where the ghosts of the Brown family gather to reenact old grievances for dwindling ratings. The cameras keep rolling, but the story is already dead. At this point, watching the Browns feels less like entertainment and more like a case study in the slow decay of self-delusion. The family's mythology, once rooted in the idea of spiritual unity and collective love, has collapsed under the weight of greed, resentment, and ego. What remains is a patchwork of people desperately trying to assign moral meaning to the wreckage. Cody clings to the idea that he is misunderstood. Robyn insists she's persecuted. The others simply move on. Nowhere is this collapse more visible than in the endless Coyote Pass saga. For years, the property was marketed as the great family dream, a shining symbol of unity, the promised land of plural domestic bliss. In reality, it became a desert monument to dysfunction. Watching Robyn clutch onto it like a dragon hoarding emotional debris is almost poetic. She speaks of it as if it were sacred ground. Yet, her attachment has nothing to do with sentiment and everything to do with control. As long as that land remains unsold, she maintains a tether to the women who escaped her orbit. Once it's gone, so is her final shred of leverage. And yet, the show insists on pretending the sale is a profound emotional event. Producers frame every scene as though we're witnessing the division of a dynasty, when, in truth, it's the paperwork for a failed real estate venture. Even the decision to film the meeting at the property, rather than somewhere warm and practical, reeks of artificial drama. It's reality television's most desperate reflex. When the emotions run dry, make the scenery symbolic. If the Coyote Pass meeting proved anything, it's that the Browns' communication problems are not born of misunderstanding, but of willful delusion. Mary and Janelle waiting in their cars because it was cold should have been a non-event. For Robyn, it became yet another cosmic slight, another conspiracy against her virtue. She read passive aggression into basic thermoregulation. It would be funny if it weren't so depressingly familiar. The woman has turned misinterpretation into a religion. Meanwhile, the show continues to stage scenes that feel more like hostage negotiations than family gatherings. Every conversation drips with years of unspoken contempt disguised as spiritual discourse. Each discussion about fairness or property is less about resolution and more about reenacting the hierarchy that destroyed them. Even now, with nearly every bridge burned, the Browns cannot resist turning the ashes into a sermon. And yet, despite the decay, the cameras persist. The production has become the family's last remaining relationship, a dysfunctional marriage between spectacle and self-pity. The cast may despise one another, but they are united in their addiction to attention. Every confessional, every awkward reunion, every teary close-up is another paycheck and another chance to polish the ruins of their image. The viewers, once sympathetic, are now simply exhausted. The cycle of crying, blaming, and rewriting history has become so predictable that even the most dramatic revelations land with a sigh. When Cody and Robyn sob over bad memories in their McMansion, it feels less like grief and more like a poorly rehearsed scene from Days of Our Lives. The line about moving to escape painful memories is particularly rich, coming from two people who have spent years manufacturing new ones for television profit. Their fresh start is just another relocation of dysfunction. A new house, a new facade, the same chaos. The justification that they couldn't stay in a home filled with sorrow is laughable when one remembers that they've turned every home into a battleground. If moving could fix emotional rot, the Browns would be saints by now. Instead, the McMansions' decline mirrors their own, neglected, hollow, and endlessly remodeled for appearances. Cody's if-only complex continues to fuel this cycle. If only he had more obedient wives, if only the children respected him, if only the new house felt right, then surely happiness would finally arrive. But the goalposts always move, because the problem was never external. His misery is not environmental, it's structural. It lives in the architecture of his ego, not the layout of his living room. Robyn's brand of denial complements his perfectly. Her compulsive need to be the victim dovetails with his need to be the misunderstood patriarch. Together they form a tragic duet. Two people locked in a perpetual feedback loop of self-pity. She cries about being attacked. He rails about being disrespected. Both insist on their innocence as the family dissolves around them. Their love story has become a case study in mutually assured delusion. The real tragedy is not the end of a plural marriage, but the children forced to grow up inside it. Generations of young Browns have witnessed emotional neglect dressed as spiritual authority. They've watched their parents weaponize faith, loyalty, and guilt in the name of family. The result is a legacy not of unity, but of alienation. The estranged relationships, the public confessions of hurt, the long silences between siblings. These are not plot lines. They are scars. And yet, somehow, Sister Wives soldiers on, insisting there's still a story left to tell. But what story remains? The great experiment in plural harmony has failed. The spiritual patriarch has become a meme, and the audience now watches more out of morbid curiosity than genuine interest. Even die-hard fans are openly fantasizing about the show's cancellation, proposing boycotts and designated watchers to summarize episodes so the rest can detox. It's the reality TV equivalent of a hostage note. Please stop airing this. We can't take it anymore. The show's continued existence feels almost cruel. A corporate decision to keep milking dysfunction until the last tear is wrung dry. What was once marketed as a portrait of unconventional love has become a case study in emotional corrosion. The cameras no longer reveal truth. They preserve delusion. TLC has managed to transform one man's spiritual midlife crisis into a 17-season endurance test for human patience. There's an absurd irony in all this. The women who were once portrayed as submissive, Christine, Janelle, even Mary, have emerged as the only ones with any real agency. They've built lives, relationships, and businesses outside Cody's gravitational field. Their growth has rendered the central couple's stagnation even more pathetic. Every frame of Cody and Robyn clinging to each other in their self-made martyrdom only highlights how irrelevant they've become. Meanwhile, fans have evolved from voyeurs into critics, dissecting every episode not for its plot, but for its pathology. They discuss narcissism, trauma, and emotional manipulation with the rigor of psychology professors. Sister Wives has accidentally become a public seminar in dysfunctional dynamics, the televised version of what not to do in a relationship. Perhaps that's the show's final value. It no longer entertains. It educates, albeit unintentionally. It reminds viewers that control is not love, that victimhood is not virtue, and that self-awareness is the only redemption arc that matters. The Browns will likely never grasp this truth, but the audience already has. If there's any justice in television, Sister Wives will soon end, not in a blaze of reconciliation or tragedy, but in the quiet relief of cultural mercy. Let the cameras go dark. Let the Browns retreat into obscurity. They've given the world enough lessons in what happens when faith meets ego, when love becomes ownership, and when denial becomes a lifestyle. Until then, the saga will continue limping toward its inevitable end. A show about a family that no longer exists, filmed by people who no longer believe, for an audience that no longer cares. The final irony of Sister Wives is that its most enduring legacy isn't the love it tried to celebrate, but the self-destruction it refused to stop filming.